Hello dear viewers, and welcome back to the ancient dwarven hold of our ancestors. Today I shall be talking about the game Swordhaven Iron Conspiracy. Swordhaven, as I shall now call it, is an isometric role-playing game developed and published by Atom Team. It was released on the 16th of December 2025. In Swordhaven, you take on the role of an adventurer in the land of Nova Draconia, uncovering the Iron Conspiracy. You will go on quests, fight beasts and men alike, while making decisions that can affect the story being told. There are interesting characters with villains at large, but there are also those wishing to do good, and those simply looking to get by by whatever means they can. Before we get started, dear viewers, if you like what I do down here in the Ancient Hold, then perhaps consider subscribing to the channel, if you haven't already. Perhaps even leave a like and maybe post a comment with your own thoughts on the game. Every subscriber means a lot to this old dwarf. Swordhaven is another of those games that I liked the look of, and wishlisted on Steam, for the game was in early access and I generally don't check them out until they're fully released. Atom Team are the creators of the Atom RPG, which I know casually of, but I've never actually played. I heard interesting things though, and it seemed interesting. A low fantasy role-playing game by these guys seemed like it could be rather good. The game is set in the world of Nova Draconia, a land of low fantasy with its own lore and tales of the land. There are beasts and strange artifacts to contend with, and everything else you would expect in a game like this. Graphically, the game looks very pleasant to this old dwarf's eyes. It isn't bleeding edge or top of the line, you might say, but I really like it. The game has its own style with bright colours helping to ensure the palette used is not just several shades of brown. The world is described visually with a vibrancy which I dig quite nicely. There are numerous locations in the world, from wooded type areas of what you might assume of general fantasy, along with ruins of ages past, beaches, jungles, forts, towns, etc. There is a good variety here. I think they've done a good job here, so much so that the locations did leave an impression on me, as I think now I recall the colours used to bring things to life. The character models fit rather well with the rest of the artistic style going on here. Though there are no elves or dwarves, and if there were dwarves of course, these would have sorted out all the quests in no time at all, so all the characters are humans. I guess each looks quite similar to another, but they look more than ample for proceedings. The beasts, the monsters that you will encounter on your adventures, are a mix of real-life horses and cows and dogs and such, along with more fantasy-like creatures like giant spiders, great dangerous birds, and others. They look lifelike and fit well with the low fantasy vibe going on here in Swordhaven Iron Conspiracy. You can rotate the camera 360 degrees, which is nice. This functionality isn't always a given, so it's nice to see here. The controls are what you have come to expect from computer RPGs in this manner, and it works well. You can individually move each of your party members or move all of them in one go, as I generally did. There are also two speeds you can run the game at, which affects how quickly your characters move around the screen. I pretty much had the fastest setting on all the time, unless I was exploring a dangerous area where every footstep could be fraught with danger. It doesn't speed up combat or anything, just the speed at which the characters move. This is a nice touch as you do spend quite a chunk of time just running about the place. The character creation is quite robust, allowing you to create a character to your liking. There are attribute points you can adjust, which, like D&D, have effects on your skills, as well as health and melee damage, etc. Besides these are the skills which are again similar to D&D or the old KOTOR games. You will gain a number of these each time you level up and cover the usual things like weapon proficiency, persuasion, lockpicking, haggling, intimidation, and more. You begin the game on a ship, bound for Swordhaven. You're just a simple adventurer, not someone fated to save the world or become a brave hero of the land. You're simply just a person on your way to a new place. As is the way of things, your ship is destroyed during your trip, and you wash ashore on the land of Nova Draconia. During the destruction of the vessel, an old man gives you a special amulet, saying you must take it to the city of Swordhaven, lest bad things are going to happen, and that is probably not a good thing. It is from here that your adventure begins. You can talk to some of the other survivors of the vessel, even recruiting one to your party. The dialogue between characters can be rather interesting. As well as finding out about them, you can also discover all sorts of things, like what is happening in the local area, providing information about quests, and if you choose the certain responses, perhaps secrets that they may not have shared with you before. The skills you have in intimidation, persuasion and some other stats will have an effect on your success in trying to glean knowledge from those you speak to. What is nice is that you are awarded experience when you engage with NPCs enough and ask questions. You head off to the first area of the game, which is kind of a starter area, which introduces all the various aspects of Swordhaven. I think this is a good thing to do. You aren't immediately overwhelmed by a vast world of people all over the place, with mountains of quests and lore and knowledge dumped right on top of you. I have stopped games before out of a paralysis due to so much being thrown at me at once that I didn't know what to do or where to start, so I like what they've done here. Each location, which is usually a large square, is covered in what we old dwarves used to call the fog of war. Essentially, any part of the location you have yet to explore is covered in the black mist. This is a classic way to do things, which helps you to keep track of where you have yet to go in a location. My OCD makes me have to uncover everything possible, a minimal game in itself. In locations where there are people, or perhaps just one person, you are likely to pick up new quests. Not everything is handed to you though. You'll need to talk to the NPCs a bit first, or pass certain checks. Indeed, some quests you have to figure out how to obtain them. The quests themselves involve all sorts of things, from obtaining an item from some place, clearing out a location of monsters or bandits, resolving a dispute between two people or factions, finding the culprit of a murder, and all sorts. There is a good mix of stuff going on here, with some interesting people to interact with, which keeps things interesting. It isn't all kill X or get 8 bear hides. There is some of that, but much more besides. Moving between locations, you'll find yourself on the Overworld map. This is something similar to old RPGs like Fallout, where you move across the land to different locations, or simply to explore. Events can occur while you are on the move, which you'll have to deal with. This could be a patrol of bandits, or a cave containing minerals and monsters, or some other such thing like a merchant. There is a reward too for exploring both the overworld map and individual locations, as you'll come across hidden treasures you can dig up or hiding in a tree stump perhaps. There are ore veins to mine and out of the way camps to discover, which makes for a more interesting world to run about in. Combat in Swordhaven can be real time with pause or a turn-based affair. I use the turn-based mode exclusively, as I'm old and real time can be quite frantic. The turn-based affair is similar to old RPGs, or perhaps to Baldur's Gate 3 I suppose, in the most modern comparison. This means that characters on both sides will take turns to activate. During their turn, a character has stamina points, which they spend to move, attack and use abilities. The turn sequence is denoted by initiative order. If you're familiar with turn-based affairs, then you will get on with this well. If not, well, when it's a character's turn to activate, they can spend stamina points on the actions described. Most of the time, you'll be moving to engage other characters and performing some kind of attack. Usually, if you have to move a non-trivial distance, the number of attacks will be reduced, possibly even to 0 if you've travelled quite a distance. I'm not entirely sure how the chance to hit is worked out. Most likely involves the weapon skill against the enemy's dodge and parry chance and all that. What I do have to say in this is that early on I found it quite disheartening how often my party members would have their attacks dodged. It did get rather frustrating at times. There are some potions and skills that can help, which is nice, but it might be something that could make players feel bad if it happens too much. You can move out of melee range with characters without triggering what's known as an attack of opportunity. This usually means you can't just move in and out of combat without potentially taking damage. But here you can do that with no penalty. The other thing is that you can't choose to hold your activation for later in the fight round, or use up your stamina to perhaps adopt a defensive stance that would make you harder to hit. Not by default on every character at least. The absence of these things means sometimes you have a character that can't do a lot on their turn, which can again feel bad. Characters in your party will have access to abilities donated by their proficiency with weapons. Each time you level up, depending on the difficulty, you will gain points to invest in a new combat ability. The higher your skill with a weapon type, the more abilities it will have access to. They cost stamina points like attacks and movement, but can be quite powerful and pivotal to you winning a combat encounter. Being able to knock people down, confuse them, counter-attack or knock them away is very useful indeed. When enemies lose all their health, they will perish. If one of your characters loses all their health, or normal anyway, they will fall to the floor unconscious. At this point, they are not lost to your party, just temporarily out of action. If all your characters are rendered unconscious, then your game will be over and you'll have to load from a previous save point. If you have a character downed but manage to defeat the enemy with what members you have left, then you will win the day and the character will stand back up again. That player will get the wounded debuff though, which reduces their stats until they rest at an inn. General movement in combat is good, but you can find yourself in some really enclosed spaces with people getting stuck behind other people, which can be a pain in the bum. There are situations too where it seemed clearly there was a space for someone to pass through, but they're unable to. Weapons with reach can help with this, as you can attack things from further away. The combat is not easy, for this old dwarf anyway. There are a lot of fights where you'll be outnumbered, and you'll need to use all the tools available to you to come through on the winning side. It was pretty tight on a few fights with that exhilaration as you manage to defeat the enemy before all of your party members go down. This is where the percentage chance to hit can really hinder your prospects of coming out on top. You will lose fights due to missing twice on every activation of a character, or missing that final hit that would decide whether you win or lose. It can be pretty brutal. The equipment you can both acquire and make are vitally important to your ongoing success, and there is a fair amount of it in-game. It is your classic medieval-like weapons with arming swords, bearded axes, claymores and such. It is a mostly grounded affair. The weapon types with their associated skills means you can fit out your party as you like. You'll get drops from baddies and chests and even rewards, along with crafting, so there is a good mix of ways to acquire them. A lot of weapons are modifiable as well, with swapping out the grip or the handguard providing you with extra damage or hit chance. I like this a lot as you can really power up your party members. To craft things in Swordhaven, you'll need to gather the materials required for different things, like iron bars and such, as well as creating components for items such as handles, sword tangs and so on. Because of this, it is nice when you're able to actually craft something. One problem with this is that you need to spend skill points in crafting, which might otherwise wish to increase combat skills. To be honest, it's a shame it isn't its own thing away from the skills system. And there are other skills or abilities that are not tied to weapon skills. You can learn these from specific NPCs, like the shield bash from an old knight if you do some quests for him. Some characters even begin with or seem to gain skills as part of their backstory. I played as a priest of the dragon. I thought I might get something to do with healing, but there doesn't seem to be much in the way of healing in the game, especially in the magic wise. I guess this fits in with the low fantasy. The general pace of the game works out rather well, I would say. The length of play between gaining levels doesn't feel like a great stretch of time, which is nice. You can assign skill points every level, though I wouldn't recommend trying to be a jack of all trades and rather specialise on a few things. Outdoorsmanship seemed like a good stat for most, as it granted more stamina points after a rest. The skills do have a wider appeal than just increasing this one thing. Having high persuasion, for example, also increases the hit chance of your party members. The main story isn't immensely exciting, but it does enough of a job to keep you interested. There are several interesting side quests to keep your interest, which I think is important. I find in a lot of RPGs that the side quests have a major impact on whether I dig a game or not. I think it's due diligence to mention that I had trouble completing the game, as the final battle was for some reason so difficult that I couldn't defeat it, even after switching to easy mode, which was quite depressing. I managed to finish the game using different choices, making the fight easier, but I felt this conflicted on how I saw my character, and sadly, when I did finish it, nothing happened. and every time I spoke to the main NPC, it restarted the whole end dialogue over and over as if I hadn't just fought them. I wonder if the GOG edition is a bit buggy, I'm not sure. I reached out to the developers and they have asked for my save file, so hopefully they'll get back to me with what the problem is. Despite the difficulties that I encountered, I would say that Swordhaven Iron Conspiracy is a fine addition to the isometric CRPGs out there. I have my likes and dislikes, but rather it is a well-made game that has appeal to us classic RPG enjoyers. There are fun quests, combat is satisfying even though it can cause anxiety, and the characters are interesting. If you like isometric role-playing games, then I think this is definitely worth adding to the library. It isn't high fantasy, so you won't experience lots of flashy fireballs and such, but I think it does an interesting job with a more grounded approach to things. It's a well-crafted title with heart and effort clearly put into it. It isn't too expensive at full price, providing an experience that is well worth the pennies I spent. I always recommend GOG as the go-to place to get games, but with the game seemingly being updated at least faster on Steam and with the problems I received, I think Steam might be the best place to check it out. And there we go, dear viewers, another video from me here down in the Ancient Hold. Thanks for watching this far, I hope you enjoyed it, and I shall see you next time.